eyes closed, jaw slack. There was no question now. Paige hadn't drowned. She hadn't vanished. She'd been taken and filmed. The camera had kept rolling long after anyone thought it would, and if this tape had survived, there could be more. There had to be more. Back in her office, she wrote one sentence on the case board in black marker beneath the timeline. Find the second tape. Because there was always a second tape. People like Rhodes didn't stop at one, and they never worked alone. Marley didn't sleep that night. She stared at the ceiling fan until the sunrise began pushing through her blinds, her mind spinning over images she couldn't unsee. Paige's limp body, the voice that said, "She's still warm," the camera that kept recording. She kept hearing the click of the tape slot closing, kept seeing that single word scrawled on the masking tape box. Watch. By 7:30 a.m., she was parked outside the storage depot at Finch Hollow, a quiet, slumped-over facility just off Route 17. Half the units were rusted shut. A broken security light buzzed above the gate, clicking in and out of life like a dying insect. She'd followed the lead from the old utility bill left behind in Clayton Rhodes's last known apartment, buried in a scanned rental folder under a different name, Charles Delaney. It was a low-effort alias, probably fake, but the bill had been real. $43.12 paid monthly to Finch Hollow Storage, Unit 117. The address had gone cold in 1996. No forwarding, no cancellation, just silence. She approached the office, badge clipped to her belt, and knocked on the bulletproof glass. A bleary-eyed man in a hoodie appeared, sipping a giant mug of black coffee. "Need access to an abandoned unit," she said. "Law enforcement, Knox County. You've got a Unit 117 rented under the name Charles Delaney." The man glanced at her ID, frowned, and pulled up the ledger. "That one's been unpaid since, 1996. We sealed it years ago. Could have auctioned it, but never got around to it. Probably rats and mold by now. Still need to open it," she said. "Now." The man sighed, grabbed a ring of keys, and led her through the crumbling rows. Unit 117 sat near the back, one padlock, coated in dust. Marley held her breath as the key slid in. The lock gave with a groan. She opened the door. The smell hit instantly. Mildew, old paper, something sour and mechanical. Inside were 6 plastic storage bins stacked against the wall, one old steamer trunk, and a black duffel bag caked in mold. No furniture, no labels, just storage meant to disappear. She opened the first bin. Books, technical manuals on carpentry, plumbing, home renovation, some handwritten notes. The second bin held blank VHS tapes, dozens of them still in their sleeves, unlabeled. The kind that could hold hours of video and never draw attention. She picked one up, still sealed. The third bin was full of clothing. Marley's stomach twisted. The sizes were wrong, too small. Girls' t-shirts, bathing suits, sandals, pajamas with faded cartoon characters, all carefully folded, all old. She closed the bin gently. The steamer trunk was locked, but the hinges were rusted. One hard pull, and it creaked open. Inside were file folders, stacks of them. Handwritten names, dates, locations, notes scribbled in cramped handwriting. She read one file. Subject, PW. Date, July 12, 1992. Initial intake, 6:47 p.m. Response to sedation, compliant, disassociated, no struggle. Second session scheduled July 14, 1992. Cancelled due to contamination risk. Recording archived, PR number 11, PR number 12, PR number 13. Her hands began to shake. PW, Paige Whitmer. PR, Princess Room. The same phrase that had haunted the tape. The same title from the evidence labels found in the anonymous Dropbox. She flipped to another folder. Subject, AM subject, LS subject, CG. None of the names meant anything yet. But everyone came with notes, diagrams, observations, video logs, like someone had been building profiles, experiment logs, on human lives. She turned to the final bin. This one had a red sticker on the side, faded but visible. Duplicates. Inside were tapes, hundreds, all labeled, all carefully arranged. Marley scanned the spines, PR number 1, PR number 2, PR number 3, PR number 157. Her fingers landed on PR number 11, the first recording mentioned in Paige's file. She hesitated, heart pounding. She had to see it. Back at the sheriff's office, in the privacy of the viewing room, she loaded the tape into the player. The screen flickered, then settled. The image was clearer than the first tape. Paige sat on a pink bed, wearing the same tank top from the photo, barefoot, legs crossed awkwardly. Her eyes were half-lidded, her face slack, drugged. The camera zoomed in. A voice behind it murmured encouragements. "Good girl. Just like that. Daddy's proud." Then the voice called a name. "Clay, bring the lights in." A second figure entered the frame. Older, taller, thin. The face was unmistakable. Clayton Rhodes. And beside him, barely in frame, was another man. Blonde, younger, jittery. Matthew Tenko. They were both there. Marley slammed the pause button and sat in silence, shaking. They hadn't just abducted Daniel and Paige. They'd filmed it, cataloged it, repeated it. There were over 100 tapes in that bin alone. How many other names were buried in those folders? How many had never been reported missing? The question was too large to hold. She placed PR number 11 into an evidence bag, marked it carefully, and walked straight to the captain's office. "This case," she said, voice raw, "just became federal. Because this wasn't just a local cold case anymore. This was organized, deliberate, and part of something far bigger, something that had been running in the shadows for decades." The federal agents arrived before dawn. 2 unmarked SUVs. 3 members of a rapid response exploitation task force from Boston. Marley stood on the edge of the sheriff's lot as they unloaded portable scanners, evidence lockers, and a caseworker from Homeland Security. They moved like they already knew the shape of what they were walking into. She briefed them in clipped sentences. VHS tapes, labeled by session, date codes linked to multiple possible victims, and 2 named suspects, Clayton Rhodes and Matthew Tenko. Both long vanished. One presumed dead, the other possibly still active. They didn't flinch. They'd seen it before. One of the agents, Agent Kravitz, a pale woman with sunken eyes and an emotionless voice, asked for a quiet place to view the full catalog. Marley led her to the media room and locked the door behind her. She didn't stay to watch. Instead, she dug deeper into the paper trail. She cross-referenced every folder from the storage unit with missing persons reports from 1987 to 1995. A few names matched. Most didn't. But one location kept coming up. Half-Bridge Lake, a stretch of remote water 40 minutes inland. The name appeared in 2 session files, PR number 24 and PR number 36. She pulled up land records. There had been a cabin there, registered under a now-defunct LLC, no images, no official photos, but a maintenance request from 1991 mentioned plumbing repairs and generator service, signed by M. Tenko. It was still there. Marley didn't wait for backup. The road to Half-Bridge Lake was little more than a washboard dirt trail cut through dense pine. Rain had softened the shoulders, and her cruiser fishtailed as she climbed the final hill. At the top, she killed the engine. The cabin sat about 100 yards from the water, weather-beaten but intact. Gray wood siding, sagging porch, one broken window patched with duct tape. Nature had started reclaiming it. Ivy, moss, tree roots bulging beneath the steps, but it stood solid, untouched by time or attention. She drew her flashlight and stepped through the brush. The front door creaked open with little resistance. No lock. Inside, it smelled of rot and old damp wool. There was no furniture, only a folding chair and a milk crate covered in dust. A black wire ran along the wall, still stapled neatly in place, leading to a dead security camera mounted in the corner. She stepped carefully across the warped floorboards and opened a door on the left. A single mattress lay on the floor, a pink blanket, a child's nightlight shaped like a rabbit. Marley didn't move. This was the room, or one like it, the princess room. She crouched beside the mattress, staring at the small handprints still smeared on the inside of the boarded-up window. Dust clung to the corners. On the wall, faint beneath the faded wallpaper, were tally marks. Hundreds of them, etched into the wood with something sharp. Not days, not months. Years. She stepped back into the hall and found a narrow closet beside the entryway. Inside was a shelf, and on it, a single cardboard box sealed with duct tape. She pulled it down. It rattled. She opened it with her penknife. Inside were labeled videotapes, 36 of them. Handwritten notations, names, ages, a small stack of Polaroids, some too dark to make out, others heartbreakingly clear. A girl, 6 years old, holding a chalkboard with a date, August 14th, 1992. Same day as the boat recovery. Marley gripped the shelf to stay upright. Paige hadn't died the night she was taken. She had been here, kept here, at least for a while. And if Paige had been here, maybe Daniel had too. She checked the box again. No photos of Daniel. No folder marked with his initials. No mention of a male victim at all. She stood, trembling, and looked around the room one last time. It was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature, like something had lived here and left its shadow behind. She called it in. 20 minutes later, 2 cruisers and a black SUV arrived with agents and forensics techs. They swept through the cabin, tagging everything, photographing everything. Marley stood outside under the trees, watching the wind comb through the pines, listening to the distant murmur of Half-Bridge Lake lapping at the shore. She could almost hear the oars, almost see the boat coming in. But it wasn't Daniel and Paige anymore. It was them. Rhodes, Tenko. 2 men with a plan, a location, a ritual. And 32 years of silence wrapped around their crimes like a curtain. One of the agents stepped out of the cabin, holding a small object wrapped in tissue. A ring, thin, simple, white gold, still bearing an inscription. To P, forever D. Marley took it in both hands. Daniel hadn't left her behind. He'd left a marker, a promise, something for someone to find, something to say, I was here, she was mine. We didn't go quietly, and now the world would know. The lab had pulled clean audio from PR number 12. It arrived at Marley's desk on a flash drive, marked in plain black ink. Audio extract. Rhodes. She plugged it in, put on her headphones, and closed the blinds. The waveform glowed across her screen. No music, no distortion. Just breathing, movement, voices. Then him. Clayton Rhodes. He spoke calmly, measured. The voice of someone who had practiced being gentle. A man who didn't scream his commands, but whispered them, like a teacher at story time. Is the light too bright, sweetheart? A girl's voice responded. It wasn't Paige. Younger, drowsy, compliant. He asked her to lie down, told her the game wouldn't take long. His tone never changed, even when she began to cry. Marley stopped the playback and removed the headphones. She sat very still. The ring from the cabin was in a sealed evidence bag on her desk. She stared at it for a long time. Paige's ring, with Daniel's name inside. Agent Kravitz had confirmed it had traces of old blood in the channel beneath the stone. Male DNA. Too degraded for a match yet. But if Daniel had been in that cabin, there was a good chance he died there. She couldn't let herself believe otherwise. But the truth was unraveling in both directions now, past and present. and neither path led to anything she could bear for long. She pulled up the Rhodes file again. The man had no digital trail, no surviving relatives, no confirmed death, just a chain of rentals, abandoned jobs, and P.O. boxes. She expanded the search across New England and cross-referenced anyone with juvenile access history and a vehicle matching the old description. Dark blue Suburban, main plates pre-1995. She got a hit. Not on Rhodes, on the vehicle. In 2001, the Suburban was impounded outside a remote farmhouse in northern Vermont, left abandoned after a neighbor called in a welfare check. The man inside had been dead from an overdose, but he wasn't Rhodes. He was younger. Identity unknown. Rhodes's name wasn't mentioned in the report, but in the barn behind the farmhouse, police had found a padlocked freezer full of VHS tapes, labeled the same way: PR number 188, PR number 189, PR number 190, and so on. They'd never made the news. The tapes had been sealed, quietly passed to federal storage, classified under an internal exploitation task force name: Family Sanctum Fellowship. Marley picked up her phone and called Agent Kravitz. "He's not the only one," she said, "and I think he gave this operation a name." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "We know," Kravitz said. "We believe the tapes were circulated through a closed network of individuals, small group, rotating locations, shared materials. We're working on identifying more members. Rhodes may have been a founder." Marley exhaled slowly. "I found the cabin. I found the ring. Paige was there. Daniel might have been too. And the others. Dozens. Hundreds maybe. We don't know how many yet. Did you watch PR number 13? No. You need to." Marley opened the secure viewing room again and slid in the tape. This one was different. It opened on darkness, just the sound of waves, then the faint metallic squeak of oarlocks. The camera adjusted. It was inside the boat, looking at Daniel. He wasn't dead. Not yet. He was tied, wrists bound to the railing, head low, breathing shallow. A voice behind the camera, Tenko, younger, more frantic, spoke in hushed tones. "Do we keep him, or finish it?" Rhodes answered calmly. "He's too strong. She's the focus. He was just..." Context. Then Daniel spoke. It was a whisper. Raw, bloody. "You'll burn for this." Rhodes didn't respond. The camera turned. For one moment, Paige's face came into view. She looked straight into the lens. Her lip was split. Her eyes were alive. And then, static. Marley pressed pause. She stared at the frozen image. Paige had known the camera was running. She had looked straight into it, as if begging someone, someday, to see her. And now someone had. Marley backed out of the room and slid the tape into a new evidence bag. That image, Paige looking into the camera, wasn't just evidence anymore. It was witness, survivor, and Marley would make sure the world saw it. She walked to the task force staging area, where the agents were working through the catalog. "I want to go public," she said. "I want the photo, the ring, Paige's image on that last tape. I want it all released." Kravitz looked up. "You sure?" "Yes." "Then we start with a name." Marley didn't hesitate. Clayton Rhodes and Matthew Tenko. Because this wasn't folklore anymore. It wasn't just a mystery. It was the truth. He'd been watching her. Marley felt it before she knew it. A slow, creeping certainty that settled at the base of her neck like cold fingers. It started as a shadow in her periphery, a car she saw twice in the same day. Then it became a man. Middle-aged, khaki jacket, thinning hair, standing across the street from the station as she left for the night. He never smoked, never spoke, just stood with his hands in his pockets and eyes on the door. He never blinked. At first, she told herself it was nerves. The case had wormed under her skin, crawling into her dreams, tainting every quiet moment. But by day 3, she knew she wasn't imagining it. He was waiting for her shift to end. He was always watching from a distance, always gone by the time backup arrived. She ran facial recognition off the security footage and got nothing. No driver's license, no warrants, no DMV record. It was like he didn't exist. But then, late one evening, he slipped. A red light camera on Water Street caught him pulling a U-turn. The plate traced to a vehicle rented 2 weeks ago from Bangor Airport under the name M. Canning. Fake ID, prepaid debit card. The rental company didn't even have a phone number, but the time of rental? July 21st. 2 days after Marley had reopened the Whitmer case, she pulled every file again, spread them out like a deck of cards. Rhodes, Tenko, the bait shack, the ledger, the videotapes, the logbooks, the boxes, the ring. She needed to find the one thing they'd missed. The reason someone would come out of hiding now after 32 years of silence. She got it at 2:11 a.m. A noise from the back of the evidence vault. She wasn't supposed to be there that late, technically a violation of protocol. But she couldn't sleep. So she came in to review the tape logs again, make sure nothing had been misfiled. And that's when she heard it. A door closing, quiet, precise. Not the front door, the back. She reached for her sidearm, heart pounding. The corridor between the archive and the vault was lined with case lockers and utility closets. She moved slow, silent, her breath held tight in her chest. Then she saw him. The man from the sidewalk, khaki jacket, calm eyes, standing in front of the evidence shelf labeled PR number tapes. He didn't flinch when she stepped into the open. "You're too late," he said. She raised her weapon. "Down on the ground, now." He didn't move, just looked at her. "They're not all dead," he said. "You need to understand that. Not all of them died. Some were kept, protected." Face down, hands behind your head. "She was special," he said. Paige, she understood what it meant. Marley fired one warning shot into the floor. He flinched this time, dropped to his knees. She cuffed him and called it in. He offered no resistance, gave no name. But when they fingerprinted him, the database hit came in seconds. Matthew Tenko, alive, arrested. Right there in the Knox County Sheriff's Office. In custody after 32 years of absence. He said nothing during booking, refused a lawyer, refused food. Just sat still in the interview room, staring into the mirror. Marley watched him from behind the glass. His face was leaner, but the eyes hadn't changed. Still dead behind them, still scanning everything. She stepped into the room. "You know why you're here," she said. Tenko smiled, slow and sour. "I was never really gone." "Where's Rhodes?" That broke the smile. "Dead," he said after a pause. "Died years ago. But he left things behind, things I kept." Marley stared at him. "Where's Daniel Whitmer?" Another pause, then, "Gone." "Dead?" Tenko leaned forward. "Gone." She wanted to punch him. Instead, she said, "You brought hell into people's lives. You're not special. You're a predator." He tilted his head. "You think you've uncovered something deep, but you've only scratched the surface." She slid a photo across the table. Paige, looking into the camera from PR number 13. Tenko touched the corner of the image. His hand trembled. "She wasn't supposed to be in the tapes," he murmured. "That wasn't the plan. She was for Rhodes. She was a human being. She was beautiful." Marley stood. "We're going to bury you under the prison." Tenko said nothing, but his mouth twitched just once, like he didn't mind that idea at all. That night, Marley stood alone in the viewing room and watched PR number 13 again. Watched Paige staring into the lens, into time, into the future. This time she whispered to the screen, "I see you." And she meant it. They all would. 2 days after Tenko's arrest, a diver named Nathan Bell made a discovery that changed everything. He wasn't part of the official task force. Just a local, formerly with the Coast Guard, who'd followed the Whitmer case since he was a teenager. Inspired by the reopened investigation and the FBI press release naming Rhodes and Tanko, he took his personal sonar out to Devil's Elbow and began sweeping the southern inlet, an area never fully searched in 1992 due to a landslide that buried the Eastern Trail. At 3:12 p.m., his scanner pinged. 16 feet below the surface, beneath a curtain of algae and lake silt, lay the skeletal remains of a second boat. Not the skiff, not the one Daniel and Paige were seen departing in. This one was smaller, dinghy style, flat-bottomed, untouched by weather, swallowed whole by the water and forgotten. Bell marked the location, dove with a GoPro attached to his helmet, and sent the footage directly to the sheriff's office. Marley watched it on her monitor with a dry throat and clenched jaw. The camera passed over cracked fiberglass, rope netting, and a waterproof duffel bag wedged beneath a broken bench. Bell opened it underwater and revealed the contents. Clothing. A man's shirt, soaked but still patterned with a faint plaid. A shoe. A belt. And inside a sealed zippered pocket, miraculously preserved, a leather wallet. Inside it, Daniel Whitmer's driver's license. The photo was young, sunlit, 25 years old, newly married, still smiling. There was no blood, no damage to the boat, but there were scratch marks on the inner rim of the fiberglass. Deep ones, like someone had tried to claw their way out. Marley pressed pause. There was more. At the bottom of the duffel bag, just beneath the wallet, Bell had retrieved a second item, a microcassette, labeled in faint black marker, "For whoever finds me, DW." She didn't wait. She called Kravitz, had the lab transfer the tape to digital within the hour, and then she listened. Daniel's voice was different than she expected, calm, controlled. "This is Daniel Whitmer," it began. "If you're hearing this, I'm probably gone. They took us, 2 of them. They said it was a mistake, that they meant to take someone else, but they didn't let us go. Paige was taken first. I tried to fight, but they drugged me." A pause, breathing. "They made me watch. Then they told me it was my turn." Marley clenched her fists. "I managed to get the key from one of them. Tanko, I think. He was careless. I got out of the first place they kept us, but not far. They found me by the shore. Beat me. Rhodes didn't say a word. He just watched. I think they meant to kill me and bury the boat. But the storm came, and something went wrong." Another pause. A quieter voice. "If this tape is still around, tell her family she didn't give up. Paige fought until the end. And if they tell you she ran away, or fell overboard, or whatever else, they're lying." The final sentence was slower, barely above a whisper. "Please, burn it all." Then silence. Marley sat for a long time before she moved. When she finally did, she copied the tape to 5 separate drives and placed the original into the department's fireproof vault. Later that night, she stood at Devil's Elbow. The wind off the water was sharp, the sky thick with low clouds. Somewhere beneath her feet, Daniel's final words had waited decades to be heard, and they were. She lit a match and dropped it onto the rotted remains of the bait shack ledger, the one signed C. Rhodes 2 days after the couple vanished. The pages curled, blackened. Not justice, not yet, but the beginning of it. And the first thing to burn was the lie. She arrived just after sunset. Marley had just finished briefing the media team when the call came from dispatch. A woman claiming to be Paige Whitmer's niece had flown into town. She wasn't expected. No appointment. No coordination with the task force. But she was already standing at the Devil's Elbow dock, asking for the detective who'd found the tapes. Marley drove fast. The dock looked just as it always had. Splintered, salt-burned, half its boards warped from the tides. The woman stood near the end, silhouetted against the water, her back to the parking lot. mid-30s, brown windbreaker, hair pulled up. When Marley stepped closer, the woman turned. And for a second, Marley forgot how to breathe. It wasn't Paige's niece. It was Paige, 32 years older, eyes the same, and not in any database. They stood staring at one another, the sound of the tide folding in and out beneath them. Then Paige spoke. "I saw what you released." Marley's voice came slowly. "You're not dead." "No," Paige said, "but I was gone." Marley struggled for words. "Where have you been?" Paige looked out at the water. "Far enough to stay safe, close enough to know when it was finally over." She handed Marley a sealed envelope, thick, weathered. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Children, rooms, faces, all labeled with names and dates. Timestamps. These were taken by Rhodes and by the others. Some are still alive. Marley looked up, stunned. Others, they were part of something larger. The fellowship wasn't just Rhodes and Tenko. It had layers, safe houses, rules. And Daniel. Paige's face changed, softened and cracked all at once. "He died saving me," she said quietly. "They moved us after the cabin. But Daniel fought. They thought they'd killed him, but he wasn't dead yet. He caused a fire. Gave me enough time to run. I was 16 miles from a ranger station before I stopped." Marley didn't speak. "I never came forward because I didn't know who I could trust," Paige said. "They were in the system. Police, courts, foster networks. Rhodes used to call it the door inside the door. You think you're out, and there's another one waiting." "You're safe now," Marley said. Paige smiled sadly. "No one's safe, but some of us are watching now. We've found each other." Marley looked again at the photos in her hand. "Are these?" "Some are still missing," Paige said. "But they're not dead. I know where at least 2 are. One in New Hampshire, one in Pennsylvania. But I can't do this alone anymore." Marley nodded. "You won't." Paige turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the dock. "They never expected me to remember," she said. "But I remember everything." Then she walked into the darkness. Marley stood there for a long time, the waves slapping gently beneath her boots, the envelope still warm in her hands. She looked out at the water where a boat had once drifted, where Daniel had left his ring, and Paige had left her voice frozen on film. The story wasn't over. It had just begun. 2 weeks later, the task force raided a property in rural Pennsylvania. It was a private home with a church-like steeple and blacked-out windows, buried behind a tree line so thick it didn't show up on satellite until they adjusted the light spectrum. A drone, sent ahead, had caught glimpses of children's shoes near the barn. Burn barrels, a cross carved into the dirt. Inside, they found what Paige had warned them about. 3 survivors, 1 male, age 19. 2 girls, younger, 10 and 12. Pale, underfed, but alive. They had been raised on stories of judgment, of the outside world as corrupt. Their family was a cycle of silence and reward. They called themselves the ones who stay. None had ever been to school. None had ever seen the ocean, but all of them recognized Paige's name when shown a photo. She was the one who got away. The boy whispered. She promised she'd come back. The tapes in the basement numbered over 200 VHS Betamax. Some broken, some warped from fire damage. Others pristine, cataloged by initials and date. And all of them were copies. The originals, they learned, had once been stored across 3 states, traded between guardians, encrypted under a code known only to a few. But now, slowly, with each search, each confiscated envelope, they were pulling the thing apart, tearing it down, one name at a time. Paige stayed close to the investigation, quietly, never on record. But she shared what she remembered. Names, faces, routines. She walked through sketches of buildings long destroyed, recognized handwriting, corrected dates. Marley watched as a network that had lived underground for more than 3 decades began to crumble in the daylight. But there were still pieces missing, like the man in the Polaroids, the one who was always just out of focus, the one they'd started calling the Overseer. His face was never clear, never full, but always there, behind the girls, in the mirror, in the shadows of the princess room. A figure with gloves and a cane, never speaking, only watching. Marley showed the photos to Tenko in federal lockup. His eyes changed. "You'll never find him," he whispered. "Why not?" "Because you already have," he said. Marley stared at him. Tenko smiled. "He's still out there, and you'll know it when you hear the bells." "What bells?" "You'll know." That night, Marley couldn't sleep. She walked the dock at Devil's Elbow again, just as the wind began to shift. In the distance, the water slapped against something wooden, slow, repetitive, like oars. She turned, but there was nothing. Still, she listened, and just faintly, on the breeze, a chime, low, distant, a bell. It could have been wind, could have been imagination, or it could have been the last piece of a machine still humming beneath the world. The tapes were just the beginning. What they'd unearthed wasn't a man, or a cabin, or a boat. It was a system, a sickness, a door inside a door. And somewhere, someone was still turning the key. April 2nd, 2025. Location: Knox County Sheriff's Department. Evidence vault. The envelope came in a plain brown mailer with no return address. No note. Just a timestamp on the postal barcode. 1:14 a.m., dropped at a 24-hour parcel box 3 towns over. Inside was a single item, an unlabeled VHS tape. No markings, no writing, no dust. It had been handled recently. Marley stared at it for several long seconds before sliding it into the secure player in the viewing room. The screen flickered, crackled, then came to life. A slow, static-heavy shot of a shoreline. Half-Bridge Lake, but not present day. The colors were wrong. The grain too thick. It was dated. July 16, 1992, scrawled digitally in the bottom corner. The camera zoomed in. Daniel and Paige stood at the end of the dock. Daniel was helping her into a life jacket. She laughed, waved. They looked so ordinary, so untouched. The boat waited behind them, oars tied down, cooler packed. The sky was clear. Then the camera panned left, to the trees, and for the first time, Marley saw him. Not Rhodes, not Tenko, the third man, the one from the mirrors. Face obscured by a wide brim hat. Gloves on, holding a cane with a silver wolf's head carved into the handle. He didn't move, he didn't speak, but he looked directly at the camera as if he knew it was recording, as if he meant for it to be seen someday. Then he turned, stepped backward into the brush, and disappeared. The tape cut to black. Marley sat still for a long time. She rewound it, paused on his silhouette, printed the frame, and added it to the board. The case file was no longer titled Rhodes, Clayton, or Tenko Matthew. Now it had a new name. Unknown operator, alias the Overseer status, at large investigation, ongoing. And just beneath the label, Marley placed a final note. Paige was the first to escape. She won't be the last. Then she locked the vault and turned off the lights. Outside, a cold wind passed over Half-Bridge Lake. And somewhere deep beneath the surface, a boat still rested, waiting, but not alone anymore.